The mist was thick and cold. So was he, cold that is. His clothes were soaked with a penetrating and perpetual damp that sank right down to his bones. Flower shivered, his breath caught by the icy air, condensing around his lips with every exhale. The torch did very little to help his visibility in the dark of the night. Its narrow beam only caught misty grey walls closing in on him, and yet he could still somehow feel the wide open castle grounds around him. It was both claustrophobic and agoraphobic. He felt vulnerable. Flower kept walking, a quick pace. He wanted to get home. His dull footsteps and their accompanied syncopated echo were the only sound of life in the gardens, though a gentle breeze tussled the bushes intermittently too. He'd heard that ghosts haunted the castle grounds. George, the old guard, had regaled him with terrifying tales and supernatural stories all evening, and those eerie yarns had spooked him. Flower's torch flickered. George had told him of headless knights stalking the paths, vengeful wailing maidens in white dresses with slit wrists creeping through the bougainvillea. He'd spun fables of gruesome beasts hiding under the hedgerows, creatures with long red claws and creepy grins, waiting to grab unsuspecting victims by their ankles and pull them into their lair. He'd told Flower about the evil witches and warlocks who, hundreds of years ago, used these grounds for their dark rituals and blood sacrifices, and who, while being tortured and burnt at the stake, swore a cursed revenge in the afterlife as spirits. His torch flickered again, and again. George had told Flower that the witches and warlocks could still sometimes be heard, crying out their pained curses in the middle of the night, casting malevolent spells on those with fear in their hearts. Of course, Flower didn't believe any of those fictional fables. The torch died, and Flower came to a sudden stop, the echo of his footsteps following suit almost immediately. The walls of grey mist were replaced with walls of blind darkness in an instant. There was nowhere to go. He couldn't see anything in front of him. He shuddered in the cold. His clothes deepened the icy feeling on his skin, sodden by the damp air, and goosebumps stalked up his arms. The wind crept around him, and the flora of the gardens whispered secrets to it. Flower's heart quickened, so did his breathing. He was alone, hoped he was alone, in the quiet dark. He began to see the grey of the mist as his eyes adjusted to the darker. It did little to improve his vision. He looked at his feet. He could just about make out the path. And then a high-pitched cry in the distance broke the silence of the night. The whinny of a horse in the castle stables. Or was it a witch, a warlock cursing him? Was it a gruesome beast in the hedgerows, or a wailing maiden? The silence returned just as quickly as it had been disturbed, and Flower broke into a run, boots thumping against the stone path, eyes straining in the dark. He ran and he ran and he ran. He could feel it behind him. Something was there, following. It echoed his steps, chased him through the fog. His legs strained to move faster. His heart thrummed hard. He ran. His lungs struggled. He tried not to scream, but fearful utterances escaped his lips. A rock or a branch caught his foot. He cried out as he fell. His body slammed into the dewy grass. His face collided with the earth. He was winded and hurt. He didn't move, couldn't move. He shivered in the dirt, but not from the cold. The pursuing footsteps came to a halt, and Flower could sense the presence standing over him. He could hear it wheeze and groan. It gurgled a death rattle. The supernatural creature was about to pounce. "Flower?" came a breathless yet familiar voice. Flower twisted onto his back and looked up into the light that now shone on his prone body. "You forgot your keys," wheezed George the guard, pointing his torch down at the man. He tossed the keys to Flower. "Why did you have to run so fast, silly bugger? I could barely keep up." The end.